pledged an oath in blood. And now my home, all that I loved, is gone. Pain is all I have left.
Hello, Kratos.
God of War, cash grab, Ascension. Oh, was that what it was? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I was distracted.
Yeah, not cash and grab, yeah.
Well, you know what, Nick? I got to tell you, I wasn't super impressed with this game. I don't know. We'll talk about it a little bit, but yeah, I feel like Kratos, maybe the problem is just that he's murdered everyone. There's no one left for him to murder to make it seem really awesome.
I know. I mean, like, they got to go back to the very beginning. And, like, when he wasn't this guy out for revenge. And I think that was what made it fun for people with the God of War series. Is just to, every time he killed someone, it's like, yeah, take that. He's taking on Zeus himself. I mean, like, it's more of a kind of a mystery, like he's trying to unravel.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that, but let's start at the beginning. Welcome everybody to the Loading Bar. We're talking about God of War Ascension. I'm Jeff. I've got Nick here with me. Say hello to the good people, Nick.
Hello, good people.
There you go. And God of War Ascension. So this is the sixth God of War game, if I'm counting correctly, right? 3 on the PlayStation 3, 2 on the PSP that were later ported over, and then the third. This is the sixth of those games.
Oh, I had no idea. I thought it was the fourth one, to be honest. But okay, so
No,
been a lot of God of War, so it's a lot of killing.
Well, I guess we're not going to count the. Oh wow, yeah, we're not going to count the phone game, I guess. But no, there were 2 PSP games that came before this that were released in a package on the PlayStation 3. I think it was like last year, maybe the year before. That told essentially the prequel story for. Kratos, everybody's most lovable, angry video game man. Maybe the angriest of all video game mans. I don't know. I have a hard time conjuring up anybody who's just more pissed off at everybody all the time. I mean, at a certain point, you got to just be like, Kratos, man, I know your family got axed and shit, but, like, seriously, you have to get over this. Like,
you do have to admire the man a little bit. Like, he doesn't take shit from anybody, and he does things his own way, so... That's very cool. That's quite refreshing, I think, in the character.
Oh, yeah. I know. Kratos is still one of my favorite video game characters, simply because in God of War 2, like, where he gets killed and then murders his way to the Sisters of Fate so that he could change all of reality so that he didn't get killed. I'm like...
yeah, you can't even kill him in this game.
He's got one tool in his problem-solving arsenal, and that's murder. Just murder. So yeah, this is God of War Ascension. This takes place after I'm assuming, I didn't play the PSP games, but after the 2 PSP prequels, but before God of War 1. And it's all about, okay, so the setup here is that you've got, we've had the gods, we've had the titans, we've had all these other things. This time, it's the Furies. Kind of the big old bitches of the mythological world, who their particular thing is they are there to punish the oath breakers. So if you make a deal with a god and you go back on the deal, then the spider lady and illusion lady and tentacle lady will show up and mess you up.
Kind of like the police of the ancient world, I guess. I mean, like, they don't care who's broken the oath. I mean, like, they explain that they don't serve any one side. It's just after the oath breakers, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the only thing is that at certain points you feel like, I guess that they were dead after here. You couldn't really factor them into the rest of the God of War series. It's like, man, Kratos was doing pulling some shit in the other God of War games. Why didn't they show up there? But I guess, they were, I mean, hey, come on, guys. You don't have any illusions about how this game is going to end, do you?
No, not at all. But, like, I gotta be honest, I haven't played any of the God of War games, like, religiously. I'm not that familiar with the story. So when I heard that this was going to be a prequel, I was like, okay, great. This is going to fill me in on what's happened to Kratos. And it doesn't really. It just kind of kicks off right with him being in prison.
Okay, well, this is one of the major problems that I have with this game, is that I feel like the story for this game is really poorly put together. Like, I understand what they were trying to do, Because essentially the way that the game works is you start the game at the end with Kratos chained up on top of Hecatoncheires, this big Fury fortress, his Fury's beating him up, and he gets loose, he starts kill. The problem is that outside a very short intro sequence, we're not really totally clear how Kratos got here or why he's here or why he has such a mad on for killing these people. And the problem here is that the game keeps flashing back from that point to previous things that happened and then picking that story back up. Like at a certain point after Kratos has gotten done, killing another fucking 1,000 people, he'll take a brief moment and we'll kind of flash back to find out how this stuff got started in the first place, which, sometimes as a storytelling device that can work. But honestly, Nick, the problem that I had here was that I didn't really feel like I was connected to the story until it was almost more than halfway done. Like, was I finally getting a clear version of why Kratos was doing these things?
I completely agree with you. I think that the flashbacks were so long that I actually forgot where Kratos was in the present day. I was like, where am I now? Oh shit, yeah, I'm at the beginning of the game, which was about 4 hours ago. Okay, great.
Yeah. And it's weird too because, and I'm not exactly sure why this is, but the story is really convoluted. Not really that convoluted, but I don't really want to get into it just in case people want to get, all the people who are into the God of War series may want to experience this for themselves. But regardless to say, this seems to be the only God of War game that I've ever played where Kratos' crime, the thing that the Furies are after him for, is pretty much just being an emo dick and hallucinating from time to time. And it's just one of those things where, when you go into the God of War series, I played God of War 1, 2, and 3. I played a tiny little bit of the first PSP game, but I never finished it. But most of the God of War games, one of the things that you can always count on is that Kratos is going to be fucking pissed, And when you find... Go ahead.
He's just after vengeance, that's it. That's about as simple as you can get. That's why it's easy to go with him on this journey. Here, because it's kind of a mystery, it doesn't necessarily get convoluted, but you can get lost a little bit if you're not particularly paying attention.
Yeah, it's weird, and it feels like there's some questions in the story that never really get a very good answer. There's a kind of a subplot about one of the guys that's helping Kratos out, and Ares and the Furies and that kind of stuff. And maybe it was just that they were jumping around so much, but I just did not get a real clear indication of kind of the motivation here. And I guess this thing is that we pick up the story already in progress. Like, Kratos is afflicted with these visions. And part of what he's doing when you flashback, when you sort the story out, part of the reason that he's going back to do these things is to alleviate himself of these visions. But, the visions just seem to be making him sad and mopey. They're not pissing him off to the point that I would normally expect of a guy who, just... do you remember what happened in God of War 3? Do you remember this? Where Kratos essentially destroys the entire world because fuck it, I'm Kratos?
He destroys an entire city just to have his own way. And that makes the player go, holy shit, this guy means business. All right, okay, I've never seen this before.
Yeah.
From the hero of a game. Here it's I'm not exactly sure what his inner struggles are, to be honest.
It kind of feels like they dialed this is, I'm not even specify this to the character. This entire game feels like it's got the God of War dial that's normally cranked up to 12 down to about 9. It just even there's there's big cutscene pieces, there's big set pieces in this game that have these giant, you're fighting these giant creatures, you're doing all this stuff that's just totally epic, and a lot of times it doesn't feel. The problem is that they went so over the top in God of War 3. Starting the game, climbing Mount Olympus on the back of a Titan and fighting the gods and just murdering your way through the entire pantheon. I think that a lot of times what we're going to be expecting here, or what people might be expecting from a God of War game, is they're always looking to see, holy shit, that was so impressive. What are they going to do this time? And I don't feel like this really hit that bar that the other God of War games had as far as spectacle goes. There are individual moments that are breathtaking, but just on the whole, the story feels smaller and less epic than God of War normally seems to.
Maybe they should just go after other cultures' gods, like, go after, like, the Viking gods, take down Thor and Odin and stuff. I mean, like, I think they've gotten rid of all the Greek ones, so they have to go in that kind of direction, or just make a shitty prequel.
Everybody's, everywhere I look on the internet, that's what they've been saying. Egypt, Norse mythology. Jason yesterday was like, fuck it, go after the Mayans, or, Mesopotamian gods, or like,
why not?
I personally want to see Kratos versus Jesus, but that's just
that would be such a quick fight. That wouldn't even be a fight.
Well, maybe Kratos like cuts off his arm, and then Jesus turns the other cheek, and then Kratos has a change of heart, and they go skipping off into a meadow full of roses or something. Yeah, totally flipped the script, man. Oh, I didn't see that one coming. That's the most epic thing you could have done. But
yeah, you were right though. Like this game does have some cool giant set pieces, and that was thoroughly enjoyable. It's just that there's kind of points of the game where I think it tends to drag just a little bit.
Well, and they're kind of few and far between. Like there's a section kind of later on in the game where you spend a lot of time inside of this gigantic kind of clockwork statue trying to kind of get it together to get to this item. And there was a lot of things in there where, the camera's pulling way back and you're seeing like just statue coming together and these giant gears and all this stuff. But, there's one place where you're riding these big, I don't know, clockwork snakes around, which is pretty cool. The problem is that, like I said,
it takes quite a bit. Like, cause you're riding those giant snakes and then, by the time you're traveling for so long and you haven't met anyone to fight yet, so you're kind of itching to get back into it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just the way I felt. Like, it went on for just a little bit too long.
It's mostly just the fact that the high parts are pretty good. It's just that, like, I'm having throughout this game, I kept asking myself, like, would I rather just be playing God of War 3 again? And most of the time, the answer was kind of yeah. But anyway, that's as good a segue as any for combat. Let's talk about the combat and the. I really don't want to spend this entire game just bitching about this game, but fuck, man. Like, okay, unlike previous God of War games, I mean, this game has a lot of the similar traits from God of War. Fixed camera angle, right stick to dodge, kind of Fast and Furious. You got your Blades of Insanity, or whatever the fuck they're called, Chains of Fury, or I don't know, one of those things. But unlike a lot of the other games, that's your only primary weapon. Are the Blades of Chaos. Blades of Chaos, there we go. That's what.
Yeah. I mean, you can pick up some weapons off the ground, but it's really just for one use.
Yeah,
like you can either throw them or, stab or hit.
Plus, I mean, most of the time, those weapons are they're not powerful enough to really use. Like, especially once you start upgrading the Blades of Chaos, like there's not, I mean, sometimes you'll pick up a weapon that's like long range that you can use. There's some enemies farther away from you, but for the most part, it's kind of just, like, I would pick those up and then I'd forget I even had them because they're so ineffectual compared to your main attacks. Now, the attempt here to get around this being kind of generic is that the Blades of Chaos now have 4 different magics that can be imbued within them to change up your attacks, make them, slightly different, and to change up the sort of magic that you're using. They have a system where, if you keep hitting people, you build up a chaos meter. When that gets higher up, your weapons start doing more damage. You can unleash like these super attacks. The thing is that none of them feel different enough. None of those different magics feel different enough to really get you into it.
Yeah, I felt like, what they did do is trying to make it different for each enemy type. So one weapon type would be good for a certain enemy. Like, if you use like what are those flying harpies? Mm-hmm. Harpies are good to fight with the electrical weapons, as opposed to the minotaurs with water weapons. Sorry, the freeze weapons.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's definitely reasons. There's definitely reasons to switch between them, and there's certain weapons that work well on other people. The thing is that I never really felt like I had to use those. Like, it seems like you could kind of just brute force your way through most encounters with whatever of those weapons you decided you wanted to use.
Oh, definitely, man. I don't think there's any strategy to it. This is a pure button masher. Like, you can just slam the control into the table and you'll be, killing people, no worries.
I mean, yeah, and it's, but the thing is that it's just, in a lot of the God of War games, you had different weapons that you would get that were even more brutal. There was a giant fist that you had in God of War 3, and there's different stuff. And I really missed that. Like, I really kind of felt like the combat in this game kind of took a step back from the previous God of War games, where it was a little bit less. It seemed like it was just less inventive.
Well, I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot there, because since this is a prequel, Kratos isn't as powerful as he is in the later games. So they kind of had to go back and scale back his fury and his capabilities.
Oh, come on. Come on, Nick. You know the abilities just as well as everybody else. You could have had him be super fucking powerful at the end of this game, and then, like, with her dying breath, the last fury takes away all his power. Or something like there were multiple ways that you could have given him more power and then taken it away. Because, I mean, otherwise it's just, it works into the whole games as a power fantasy thing, is you don't want to be going backwards. You don't want to be less powerful now than you were in the previous games, because on a franchise that's based on power and spectacle, that's just going in the wrong direction.
Well, especially in this type of game. I mean, this is a purely hack and slash, and this is kind of what we've come to expect with the character, and it's what we'd like him to be.
Yeah.
I mean, like, in the development of this game, they said that they're trying to make Kratos more human. I guess in his fighting capability, because his character was not human. He was a monotone emo who barely spoke throughout the game.
Yeah, but mostly what he did, it was for killing people. It was great. I didn't have to put up with a lot of whining about shit. Oh, damn it.
Well, I mean, in this game I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the other ones.
Yeah. And there's also a series of sub-weapons that you get throughout the course of the game. Some of them are pretty useful. Most of them have a little cooldown timer on them, and that you can up, they have the same red ore upgrades. But I'll be honest, like, I mean, for most of the God of War games, it seems like, you really had to kind of play the game like more than once to get everything like fully upgraded. Whereas by the end of this game, I was very close to having the entirety of the ability set fully upgraded, all of the magics, all of the different powers. It just seemed like a much less in-depth upgrade system. That it's kind of a shame, because a lot of times you would play the game a second time to try to get those things upgraded, whereas here there wasn't really a lot of good reason to go back and play the game again. Especially because there's just some weird shit in this game. Like, you pick up these things while you're playing through the game that are essentially game breaking. They're power-ups that you could turn on or turn off. When you beat the game, you could turn them on. It's stuff like you take a third of the damage you would normally take, or your rage meter is constantly full, which is pretty much breaks the game all on its own there. So you could turn these things on and off when you do New Game Plus, but then they also took away all of the health and magic upgrades that you get when you play through the game the first time, which was just a weird thing. When I went to go back to play the game again, I was just like, well, why? I mean, I'm obviously playing this just to kick this game in the balls as hard as I can. Like, just give me the power, you guys. Why are you holding me back? So I don't know. There's collectibles in this game. There's different costumes that you can use when you play back through the game again. Like I said, some of the boss fights, some of the interactions that you have with people are really good, and they harken back to the old God of War games. But, I mean, a lot of this really felt like a cash grab, man. It really just felt like they had to put out another God of War game, so they slapped together everything they had and put it out as is.
I mean, I don't think it's that terrible. I mean, like, I understand how you feel it's a cash and grab, but I feel that it's close enough to the original God of War games that it's not so insulting as a title.
Yeah.
I mean, but like, how did you feel about the QuickTime events? Like, doing a little bit of research, people saying that there's more QuickTime events in this game than there have been in the previous ones. I mean,
QuickTime events in a God of War game don't bother me. You could have, there were a few times where maybe they got on my nerves a little bit, but I mean, for the most part, I expect a God of War game to have more QuickTime events than a lot of other games. And maybe, all right, it isn't a bad game. This is not a bad game, but it's just when you stack it up against the other God of War games, it's kind of forgettable. It does not stand out as much. Like, if you're sitting there and you're waiting, there was even parts of this game where I was noticing things. I saw bugs in this game that I've never seen in a God of War game before. There were places where, during platforming sequences where Kratos should have been, there should have been places where you should not have been able to jump in this direction and die, where I would die a couple of times. There were places where some of the swinging mechanics would just go on and on and on and on and on. The whole thing felt like it didn't have the same level of polish that other God of War games have. So I guess what it comes down to is that, like, just as a game in a vacuum, like it's fine, but when you compare it to the other God of War games, in my opinion, it just doesn't really, like, at least the single player doesn't really stack up. Which maybe go ahead. I feel like I've been talking.
I was going to say, I completely agree with you there. I mean, like, some of the jumping mechanics are a bit faulty sometimes, because when I would, jump a little bit to the left, I would be falling, but suddenly I would just dart, right to where I was trying to go. And that kind of breaks up the speed of the game. Yeah,
and speaking of which, me and this game, we got beef. Because there's a part in this game, I swear to you, I didn't even know this was a thing. I was, playing through the game, minding my business, hey, whatever, kind of, maybe this is one of the reasons that I feel kind of indignant. I feel a little sour about the game, but played the game, minding my business, hey, whatever. And suddenly, like, this is a game where after almost every enemy encounter that you go through, they give you a chest full of health or magic, and they're pretty liberal with giving you power-ups and red orbs, and to the point where most of the game's encounters are not that difficult. When suddenly, about 7/8 of the way through the game, you are put on this goddamn elevator and forced to fight a whole bunch of assholes that are... It's basically a challenge. It's a difficulty spike that comes out of nowhere, where they put you in this place and you have to fight all these enemies that are all really kind of fast with long range attacks, and then they don't give you any power-ups. They don't give you any health to get back. So, Nick, I'm a pretty easygoing guy. Like
you finished your games. You are, dedicated.
Yeah, I don't let games piss me off. That's one of the reasons that I Kevin and I have this all the time where he's like, you're so good at games. I'm like, I'm not so good. I refuse to let the games piss me off. I threw my controller. I literally turned and threw my controller, put a dent in my wall, and went, fuck you, God of War, on this sequence. I had to stop for like an hour and chill out and then come back to it. And when you get
done, cry for a little bit, saying, like, what do you want from me, please? Come on, just a little bit, just a little health. Come on.
And then I took the ribbons out of my hair and I took my dress off and I got back into the game. I said, but it's weird because I was playing this. I was like, God damn, this is hard. And then when I got up, when you beat that sequence of the game, which is right before you get to the end, like within an hour of you getting to the end of the game, the game gave me a gold trophy. It was like, well, so you guys knew this shit was real hard. And the thing is, it's not optional. It's not something you could skip. It's something you have to go through. And suddenly a game that's been relatively easy going suddenly just has this gigantic difficulty spike that really puts you in a bad mood. Especially...
You got a gold trophy for that lift mission?
Yeah.
What do you get for killing the final boss?
A gold trophy. Like, the game, the Sony Santa Monica realized that particular sequence was so goddamn hard that when I got through it, I got the equivalent of, like, the beating the game level of trophy. That was bullshit, man. But, so, I don't know. That's God of War. The ending, is alright. Like, to be honest, I had to try the elevator part like 6 or 7 times. The last boss fight, once, maybe twice. Like, there were a bunch of mid boss sequence saves that you could hit so that you didn't have to start the whole fight over again, like you do in a big game like this. But that one part, just, I don't know, like, it just came out of nowhere, and then once it was gone, it was like, all right, back to normal. Everything's easy like it was before.
It seems like everybody's having issues with that particular level. I'm hearing it in all the reviews, and all my friends who played this game always talk about that fucking lift mission.
Yeah, it sucks. It's a very huge spike, and I don't understand why. Like, narratively, I guess it's framed, it's kind of a big thing that's happening at that sequence, but not so big as to grind the game to a halt like that. I don't know. It's really kind of a strike against the game for me. But anyway, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the thing that you focused on for me, Nick, which is the multiplayer. I didn't get a whole lot of time to play, but I think you got a lot more time. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the multiplayer in the game?
All right, okay. Well, as much as you didn't like the single player of this game, I felt even less about the multiplayer. I think it was completely forgettable. Mm-hmm. It plays like the single player. Like, you've got the same fixed camera positions, and you have the same type of attacks, same type of enemies at certain parts. I mean, I'll just break it down like this. There are about 4 multiplayer modes. There's, like, Team Deathmatch, and then there's Free-for-All, and then you got Trial of the Gods, is where you or a buddy can, like, hold up against, like hordes of these different monsters, and you have to last as long as you can. And then there's finally capture the flag. And so when you start it off, you can choose your allegiance to like a few gods, like Zeus or Ares, for the type of fighting that you wish to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And then you are capable of powering up by gaining experience for all the multiplayer matches you get. So you can get different weapons, you could customize your armor, what your character looks like, but that's about it. Like,
well, but is it? I guess is it fun, Nick? Is the multiplayer fun?
I think it's pretty meh, to be honest. I mean, there are a couple of moments where I'm feeling some sort of satisfaction when I was doing team deathmatch, and there was one guy who had been kicking everyone's asses throughout the entire game, and then 4 of us just pinned him to a corner and just beat the ever-loving shit out of him. And that was, like, really satisfying. I felt like we were a bunch of football hooligans or something.
So you're saying that when the game became like a shower room prison, like...
yeah. It's like have you seen American History X? You're going to love this, buddy.
That was the best part of the multiplayer of God of War. Oh, God. I mean, what little I played, I found that it seemed like a decent enough diversion if you're really into God of War. Like, it's got some benefit to be had. Like, if you're really, if you're a super big fan of God of War, there's enough of a story-ish framing to get you involved. But it's got all those Call of Duty unlocks to keep you playing, and that as you play, you're going to unlock more and more powerful stuff. It's a little imbalanced, it seems like, against people who've been playing a little bit longer, but I don't know.
Yeah, I just felt particularly that I would not be returning to the multiplayer of this game anytime soon. And I feel that that'll be the same way for the majority of people who play this game. I think what people would really want to focus on is the single player, because that's a lot more cinematic and the battles are a lot more epic in that.
Okay. Well, that sounds about, I mean, I don't know. Anything we haven't touched on that you feel like people should know?
Yeah, I got a question. You remember that bit when he's climbing up to the Delphi mountain?
Uh-huh.
And you have to ride all these giant snakes, and it takes you like an hour just to go all the way top of the hill.
Yeah.
As soon as you get there, there's this old man with a walking stick and it's like a bag. How the fuck did he get up there? Seriously, before you did. Like, you've been collecting letters the entire time where he's been bitching about how cold it is, yet he got there before you. It's like a hidden escalator or something at the side of the mountain that you passed when you were climbing all these fucking snakes. That pissed me off.
Well, that's the reason that the camera is static, because they let you turn the camera. You would have seen the ski lift that came from the other side of the mountain that just brings you directly to the top.
Son of a bitch, Kratos, you gormless twat. I didn't even fucking notice that.
All right. Well, what do you give it? What do you give it, Nick?
I give it a decent bargain bin price. Like, I don't think it's really worth a full price, but I think when it goes down in price, it's definitely worth picking it up and having a go.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, I feel like that this is this just isn't the God of War that I mean, this is not the God of War that I was looking for, to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's just a little bit less, it's a little bit smaller in scope, the story is a little bit more convoluted, and it's really a step down when you go from fighting the gods to fighting the Furies, which Kratos never really seems super, super threatened by. I mean, I think the multiplayer is going to add enough so that, if you get it and it's a little bit discounted, that you're going to get a decent package with a good single-player game. It's, add 10, 12 hours, depending on how long it takes you to get that fucking elevator. And, you got the multiplayer, which seems like it's unique enough to at least keep your attention for a while. Like, I don't think that it could... I almost feel like they could have sold the multiplayer all on its own for, like, $10 to $20 for people who are really into it, and maybe drop the price of the game a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, there's enough there. There's enough there to keep you interested. It's just that if you go into this, if all you've ever played in God of War is God of War 1, 2, and 3, and you go into this like, oh yeah, more God of War, yeah. I feel like if you're really familiar with those games, that you're going to end up going, oh, I think I'd rather just go back and play the God of War HD collection, or maybe God of War 3. I don't know. But you know what? I do have to say that I am totally on board. Everybody's been saying it, and like we said before, I'm totally on board with Kratos just ripping the entire universe a new asshole. Just go through every god that there is out there. Because you know what, Nick, after they've made like 12 of these games, there's not going to be any option left but for him to have a one-on-one with Xenu and the gods of Scientology. And that is the game that I really want to see.
Okay, that's going to be fun. I want to see that.
You will need this skill for the path ahead.
And what path is that?
You will return.